आपके सामने ये जूम लाइब्रेरी का एक क्लिप है। जूम लाइब्रेरी आपकी बाकी जो फिजिकल लाइब्रेरीज होती है उसी का एक वर्चुअल कॉन्सेप्ट है। यहाँ पर आप यूपीएससी, स्टेट पीसीएस या फिर किसी दूसरे कॉम्पिटिटिव एग्जाम्स के लिए जो बाकी लोग प्रिपरेशन कर रहे हैं उनके साथ एक नॉन डिस्टर्बिंग एनवायरनमेंट में अपनी पढ़ाई कवर कर सकते हो। एंड आपको एक ऑर्गेनाइज एनवायरनमेंट मिलता है जहाँ कोई डिस्टर्बेंस भी नहीं होती है। प्लस में आपके सिटिंग आवर्स बहुत अच्छे से इंप्रूव हो जाते हैं। एंड इसके अलावा हम लोग कुछ शेड्यूल्स भी रन करते हैं एग्जाम स्पेसिफिक जो भी हो रहा होता है, जो आपको सिलेबस वगैरह कवर करने में बहुत हेल्प करता है। सो यू गेट अ वेरी ऑर्गेनाइज एनवायरनमेंट टू इंक्रीज योर सिटिंग आवर्स। अगर आप इस कॉन्सेप्ट को ज्वाइन करना चाहते हो तो इसी वीडियो के नीचे टेलीग्राम में टेलीग्राम चैनल का लिंक है। आप टेलीग्राम चैनल पर जाइए, वहाँ पर डिस्क्रिप्शन में एडमिन का यूज़र नेम होगा, आप कॉन्टैक्ट करके जूम लाइब्रेरी को ज्वाइन कर सकते हो। Hello and welcome everyone. Today we are diving into the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. Okay. So you might have heard that this corridor was announced during the G20 summit that happened in India in the year 2023. Okay. In New Delhi, right? We all know about this. Well, it's been more than a year since that big reveal, and let me tell you that there have been some impressive steps forward, but also a few step backs. So, a quick fun fact: G20 summit that was hosted by India for the first time in the year 2023, it had more than 40 delegates and the world leaders in attendance. So, why is IMEC back in news? Okay, because everyone's watching how India and its partners they navigate the hurdles like funding and the regional instabilities. Okay, let's dig deeper into this thing. First, we'll try to understand what is this IMEC. Okay, how do we understand the basics of this? So we'll go further. Now imagine that you are an IAS officer. Okay, imagine yourself as an IAS officer. You are planning a global trade policy for the government of India. Now, IMAC took shape when multiple nations in the blocks, including the European Union, the Saudi Arabia, and of course, India, they signed a MOU. So MOU is Memorandum of Understanding. So this was signed in 2023 September. Okay, so these countries they signed it. Now this agreement is like a roadmap. This was detailing each partner's responsibilities. So the idea is to connect India with the West Asia and Europe, okay, through a massive infrastructure project. So whenever IMEC question pops up, you simply understand that this is going to be an infrastructure project which is connecting India with West Asia plus Europe. So this is how you form the short keywords also. Now, if you are framing a policies under Article 73 of the Indian Constitution, now this article it deals with the union executive power in the global agreements. Okay, so you will be also be ensuring that India's voice and the interests they remain strong in the corridors planning. Let me give you a quick glimpse of the IMEC map. Now this is India, and this is the infrastructure project that we'll be constructing through these countries. So we'll be connecting the Europe from here. We'll be passing through the west portion of the Asia. Okay, so Mumbai is there. In the UAE we have Jabal Ali. Then again in UAE we have Al Guwafat. Then in Saudi Arabia we have Riyadh, the capital. Then also Harad. Then moving on further, in Israel we have Haifa. Then in Greece we have Piraeus. Okay, so picture this as a network of port, road, railways which are spanning all these continents. Okay, now multimodal. You have always heard about this word multimodal, right? What does this multimodal mean? It means that the goods they can shift from the ships, they'll be transferred from ships, then they will be to move to the trains and then to the trucks. So you are using multiple modes of transport. Okay, seamless. Now with IMEC, India wants to speed up the trade by linking our ports. All right. So we have Jawaharlal Nehru Port in Mumbai, in Maharashtra. Now with hubs in UAE, then Saudi Arabia and beyond. So eventually we'll be reaching Europe. Okay. Now this is a very massive logistical puzzle, but if solved, it can make the shipping times much faster and more reliable. Okay. Fine. Then I'll take you to the next point that it will have two separate corridors. One will be the eastern corridor and the northern corridor. So they are like two branches of a giant highway. Now the eastern corridor will focus on connecting India to the west coastline with the Gulf countries. Okay. Now think of this as a starting point of the Indian export. Okay. Then the northern corridor. So this will continue that journey from places like Saudi Arabia and UAE all the way to European destinations such as Italy or Germany. So what is the aim of doing all this thing? Overall aim is to reduce the travel time and boost the trade efficiency. Okay, so time and trade, these are the core units which are at the core focus of this corridor. Okay, now another important thing, IMSC isn't just an isolated project. Okay, it's woven into the PGII network. You have heard about the PGII framework, right? So uh, this framework, which the G7 countries, they have put forward to counterbalance China's Belt and Road Initiative. Okay, now China's Belt and Road Initiative has already created huge trade routes across the Asia, then the Africa, then the Europe. Now this PGII, the Partnership for the Global Infrastructure and the Investment, the G7, okay, and India, now they are offering an alternative to the BRI. Okay, now one that will emphasize on transparency, inclusivity, and sustainable development. So these are the things which are lacking in the China's BRI. That's where India want to take the advantage here. Okay, now what is the status and implementation of IMEC? Let's try to understand this section now. Status and the implementation. So what's the real progress here? For the starters, countries like UAE and Israel, okay, so they are working on direct rail links, and Israel's Haifa, this country where Israel's Haifa, so this port is getting in a boost in the capacity, but a big chunk of the plan, especially the clean energy corridors, the fiber optic cable, the pipeline infrastructure, they are still on hold. And one reason is the political tension in the West Asia. Okay, so we all know about West Asia, the political tension happening between Israel and then Hamas and everything. So these conflicts, they halt to delay the big projects. Meanwhile, India's new virtual trade corridor. Have you heard the name of this? The virtual trade corridor. So this with UAE, virtual trade corridor with UAE, this is an exciting digital step. So using this, we are aiming to reduce the paperwork and cut the transport time for goods transfer. Okay. So remember that the corridor is not exclusive. It is meant to encourage the neighboring nations also. Like we will be involving Oman in long term, or maybe you can call it the Qatar is also there. So they will also jump in and they will also benefit from this thing. So potentially in the future, the reach of IMEC will be in among all the neighboring nations also. Then let me take you through the global significance. So what will be the importance of IMEC in other countries' connection as well? Okay, we'll try to understand this thing. Now let's pretend. So earlier I asked you to assume yourself as an IAS officer. Now I ask you to you consider yourself as a IPS officer. Okay. Now you are an IPS officer this time. Okay. So pretend being an officer in the police service and focus on the national security issues now. Okay. So you would be aware that IMEC, this can reduce the reliance on the Suez Canal. We are relying on Suez Canal a lot, right? So this is a strategic choke point with very heavy shipping congestions. Now, if an alternative route opens up, it might shift the balance of the global shipment lanes and even reduce the shipping cost. So over 40% of the world GDP is involved here in this place, and it's like a huge slice of the pie, right? Plus, we have other factors coming into picture for this section. So what happens is IMEC is aiming to develop the green energy section. It is a sustainable development program. We are not just focusing on creating the infrastructure here. We are thinking of the future. Okay, and we have digital networking here. So it's not just about the traditional trade. And all of these things, they will contribute to a more stable Middle East. Now, this is something that the world is really excited about. That India is planning something for the stability of the Middle East. So potentially, we will be lowering the conflicts in this region. Okay, so we are offering a different model from China's BRI. Okay, it is an alternative approach to China's plan. India and its partners, they show that they are ready to play a bigger role in the global economics and diplomacy. Now, historically, the places like the Suez Canal, they have been a flashpoint. You know what? The famous Suez crisis happened in the year 1956. It was in the news all over the world. So, and that crisis cost a lots of loss of the money finances loss. So having another corridor could reduce the global shipping risks as well. That's how the world thinkers they plan. Moving ahead, we would like to consider what are the significance for India. So right now we discuss about the significance of IMAC for the world. Now we want to focus on the significance of IMAC for India, how it is going to benefit India. That's why your question will be framed in the mains exam. Okay, so let me take you through this thing. Now, historically, the Gulf Cooperation Council, okay, and the European Union, they have been the top trade partners for India. Now, if we can cut the travel time by nearly half, and it will cost us by 1/3. Suppose, for example, it is costing us $90 million right now, US dollars. But what if this starts to cost us $30 million? That means we have reduced the cost by almost 1/3, right? The exports from India, the textiles that we have, the other infrastructure, the pharmaceuticals, we are good in pharmaceuticals, and we also have good IT services. Okay, so these can get a big boost. This will also have the big ports, like the Mundra port we have, or we have the Kandla port in the Gujarat. They will become the top global hubs. And it's not just about business, IMSC can also help India strengthen ties with other countries, like Saudi Arabia is there. We want to stronger our ties with this country specifically. This is crucial for the energy security. Then the economic growth is definitely there, right? And job creation is there, a stronger global presence would be there. So these are all the gains that India is eyeing upon. The time reduction, geopolitical aspirations with the European Union, GCC. I have talked about all these points. All these points are covered, right? Then now, if we are planning such a big project, definitely there are going to be hurdles, there are going to be challenges. So what are those challenges? A good officer will always think. Now, at this point, I want you to think like an IFS officer. So in this one topic, I have forced you to think like an IAS, then IPS, and now the IFS. How will you as a diplomat handle this situation? Okay, so think of yourself as an IFS, and you are working in the Ministry of External Affairs, MEA. Now you would be worried about the region's political climate. Okay, the recent flares of the Israel and the Palestinian conflict. How one event can derail the entire infrastructure plans. Additionally, some powerful nations like the Turkey is there, Egypt, Iran, Qatar, etc. They are currently outside this IMEC loop. Okay, so if they are not on board, the corridor reach might be limited. So we have to figure out this thing. The limited geographical coverage has to be considered, right? Then financing is another massive concern. Who foots the bill for the large scale rail networks or maybe the undersea cables? Who will fund this, right? Now, World Bank data shows that for the cross border infrastructure projects, the countries often struggle with the cost overrun. That means you're planning for a budget of 100 rupees, but then you have utilized more than 90% of the money into some basic things. There is still more than 50% of the project left and you have only 10 rupees. How will you do it? Right? So these are the factors they can slow even the best laid plans. So a solid diplomacy strategy is very, very essential. Financial cost is important. Regional instability, Israel, Hamas is there. We talked about the Yemen's Houthi rebels. Arab-Israel relations are also a call issue. Okay. यूपीएससी के हैंडी बुकलेट में आपको ये सारा कंटेंट मिलेगा. मैं आपको एक बार सबका सैंपल दिखा देता हूँ. एक एक चीज़ मैं आपको दिखा दूंगा. 900 से ज़्यादा माइंड मैप्स है जो आपको प्रीलिम्स में भी, मेंस में भी, स्टैटिक कंटेंट भी और डायनेमिक भी है. 400 से ज़्यादा मेंस के क्वेश्चन है प्रैक्टिस के लिए. 200 से ज़्यादा निमोनिक्स है ताकि आप फैक्ट्स को याद रख सको. कोट्स वगैरह हैं, आंसर राइटिंग की चेकलिस्ट है, डेली प्रोग्रेस ट्रैकर है, टॉपर्स का कुछ डेटा है, 7 शेड्यूल है. प्लस में इसके साथ में आपको 400 से ज़्यादा आंसर राइटिंग के कीवर्ड्स, प्रीवियस ईयर के मेंस के क्वेश्चन पेपर्स, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल आर्टिकल्स, मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री टाइमलाइन, रिवीजन पाइपलाइन, कुछ हॉट टॉपिक्स के लिस्ट वगैरह, ये सारी चीज़ मैं आपको दिखा देता हूँ. एंड देन यू कैन डाउनलोड देम फ्रॉम द डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ द वीडियो. इफ़ यू टॉक अबाउट द माइंड मैप्स ना, तो आपको 900 से ज़्यादा माइंड मैप्स मिलेंगे जो आपको प्रीलिम्स एंड मेंस में, प्लस में स्टैटिक एंड करंट अफेयर दोनों तरह के टॉपिक्स में आपके लिए यूज़फुल होंगे. जैसे 15 फाइनेंस कमीशन की रिपोर्ट हो गई है. उसके अलावा जैसे गिग वर्कर्स का टॉपिक आपको रिसेंटली मेंस के एग्जाम में भी देखने को मिला था. ग्लोबल बायोडाइवर्सिटी आउटलुक की रिपोर्ट वगैरह के बारे में. GNCTD का जो बिल था इसके ऊपर मेंस में क्वेश्चन आया था रिसेंटली. हेल्थ के डेटा को लेकर तो हर बार क्वेश्चन आता ही है. इंडिया की आर्कटिक एंटार्कटिक पॉलिसीज़ को. तो ये जो माइंड मैप्स हैं इनके सोर्सेज जनरली जो आपका हिंदी न्यूज़पेपर है, आपका इंडियन एक्सप्रेस का न्यूज़पेपर है, जहाँ से मेजरली क्वेश्चंस बनते हैं, प्लस में सनसेट टीवी के ऊपर जो बहुत सारे डिबेट्स एंड डिस्कशंस होते हैं, सनसेट टीवी वही है जो पहले राज्यसभा टेलीविजन हुआ करता था, उसको बाद में अपडेट कर दिया गया क्योंकि उसमें लोकसभा टीवी को भी मर्ज कर दिया गया। एंड कुछ मेजर जो करंट अफेयर की मैगजीन में आप देखोगे वो लोग भी इन्हीं टॉपिक्स को हिंदू, इंडियन एक्सप्रेस और संसद से ही कवर करते हैं, तो ये टॉपिक आपको वहाँ पर भी रिफ्लेक्ट होते हुए दिखाई देंगे। सो दीज आर ऑल दी मेजर थिंग्स जो आपको देखने को मिलेंगी। अब जैसे रेगुलेशन ऑफ एनजीओज को लेकर के क्वेश्चन था रिसेंटली, पॉपुलेशन कंट्रोल पॉलिसीज को लेकर, विमेन इन आर्म्ड फोर्सेज को लेकर, फिर विमेन इन जुडिशरी, विमेन इन एग्रीकल्चर को लेकर, विमेन रिजर्वेशन बिल को लेकर भी था। ये बहुत सारे क्वेश्चन थे जो रिसेंटली एग्जाम में आपको रिफ्लेक्ट करने देखने को मिले थे। बायोटेक्नोलॉजी हो गया, सीबीआई वर्सेस स्टेट्स का क्वेश्चन भी आपको देखने को मिला था, कमर्शियल कोल माइनिंग को लेकर, फिर डिजिटल इंडिया को लेकर। दीज आर द क्वेश्चन जो आपको रिसेंटली देखने को मिले थे एग्जाम में। अब अगर हम बात करते हैं कि और क्या कुछ होगा इस माइंड मैप्स के अंदर, तो बहुत सारे डेटा में कुछ और एक्स्ट्रा आपको थोड़े से दिखा देता हूँ। जैसे ऑल इंडिया जुडिशियल सर्विसेज को लेकर के अगर क्वेश्चन बनता है, एंड देन वी हैव एंशिएंट पोर्ट्स को लेकर स्टैटिक का कंटेंट है, एनिमल हस्बेंड्री का है, एसेट रिकंस्ट्रक्शन कंपनीज को लेकर भी है माइंड मैप, उसमें क्या इश्यूज होते हैं, क्या एडवांटेजेस होते हैं, फिर क्या आप वे फॉरवर्ड लिख सकते हो। तो किसी भी टॉपिक में आपको जो कंटेंट पढ़ना होगा आप उसी कंटेंट को पढ़ सकते हो, तो माइंड मैप्स इस चीज़ में बहुत हेल्पफुल है। बाल गंगाधर तिलक हो गया, विपिन चंद्रपाल हो गया, बुद्धिज्म को लेकर भी हैं, ये टॉपिक्स पूछ आते रहते हैं, तो इनके भी माइंड मैप्स से जो आपको इजीली चीज़ों को याद करने में मदद कर सकते हैं। कार्नेटिक वॉर्स को लेकर है, उसके बाद जो हमारा कोड आया था लेबर वगैरह कोड्स के, तो उनके सब पे जो डिविजन्स थे, डायरेक्ट टैक्स, इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ, फोक म्यूजिक, फिशरी सेक्टर, फॉरेन ट्रैवलर जो इंडिया में आए थे उन सबके नाम, कौन से ईयर में आए थे, क्या कुछ उन्होंने मेजर कंट्रीब्यूशन किए थे, गांधार स्कूल, ग्रीन बिल्डिंग्स वगैरह, ये सब चीज़ें आपको देखेंगे। कुछ चीज़ें प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन में आपने देखी होंगी। अगर हम इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस की बात करते हैं, देन इंडिया अफगानिस्तान के रिलेशनशिप को देख लो, आप इंडिया भूटान देख लो, एंड देन इंडिया बांग्लादेश, इंडिया चाइना, इंडिया मालदीव्स, इंडिया म्यांमार, ऐसे बहुत सारे हैं, 900 प्लस है। महात्मा गांधी, लाला लाजपत राय, जैनिज्म को लेकर, मैरिज को लेकर, और रिसेंटली नेशनल पार्क्स में क्या होता है, वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरीज में क्या कुछ होता है, प्रोटेक्टेड एग्रीकल्चर जोन्स क्या होते हैं, मनरेगा के अंदर क्या कुछ रिफॉर्म्स लाए गए, उसमें मनरेगा का भी पार्ट है, सीड इंडस्ट्री, सी लेवल राइज होना, स्कूल्स ऑफ फिलोसफी जो हम लोग पढ़ते हैं हिस्ट्री में, स्किल डेवलपमेंट, सोइल हेल्थ स्कीम को लेकर के, प्रधानमंत्री फसल बीमा योजना हो गया। इतने सारे टॉपिक्स हैं कि जो सब कुछ आपका सिलेबस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, कि कोई भी ऐसी चीज़ ना हो डब्ल्यूटीओ को लेकर के और उसकी क्या कुछ डेवलपमेंट्स होती रहती हैं, हर बार डब्ल्यूटीओ से एक ना एक क्वेश्चन आता ही आता है प्रीलिम्स में। सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयमेंट, स्टेट फाइनेंसेस, रूल्स ऑफ ऑरिजिन का था, एफडीआई पॉलिसी, राष्ट्रीय कृषि योजना, पीएम किसान सम्मान निधि वगैरह। सो ऑल द कंटेंट विच इज डायरेक्टली रिलेटेड टू योर यूपीएससी सिलेबस जो प्रीलिम्स और मेंस में मिलेगा, स्टैटिक भी है, एंड देन डायनामिक कंटेंट इज ऑल्सो देयर। तो यू नो कि आपको टॉपिक में से कौन सी चीज़ पढ़नी, कौन सी इग्नोर करनी है, वो वाला पार्ट माइंड मैप से बहुत ईजी हो जाता है। लाइक गगनयान के व्हीकल के बारे में जानना हो, रशियन कनेक्शन क्या है, सिग्निफिकेंस क्या है, तो माइंड मैप से वो चीज़ों को पढ़ना आसान हो जाता है। फिशरी सेक्टर में उसमें इश्यूज़ क्या चल रहे हैं, वेरियस इंटरवेंशन क्या है, रिसेंटली ड्राफ्ट क्या आया था, इस तरीके से एग्जाम, ये जो माइंड मैप्स हैं आपके लिए बहुत हेल्पफुल होते हैं, चीज़ों को आसान कर देते हैं। अब मैं आपको निमोनिक्स दिखाता हूँ। तो निमोनिक्स आपको फैक्चुअल चीज़ें याद करने में बहुत ज़्यादा हेल्प करेंगे, जैसे फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज़, राइट्स, कीवर्ड, डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल, शेड्यूल्स ऑफ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, पॉलिटी के तो बहुत ज़्यादा हैं। 8 शेड्यूल, क्विक नोट्स, आर्टिकल्स वगैरह को लेकर, इंडियन स्टेट्स का फॉर्मेशन कैसे हुआ, सोर्सेज क्या थे इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के, रिवर्स और डैम प्रोजेक्ट्स कौन से डिफरेंट डिफरेंट स्टेट में, डिफरेंट डिफरेंट नेशनल पार्क्स एंड वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरीज है किस किस स्टेट में, थर्मल पावर प्लांट्स कौन से स्टेट्स में, इनको आपको दिखा देता हूँ और भी आगे जाके। फिर बहुत सारे रैंडम भी है, प्रिंसिपल्स क्या होते हैं जैनिज्म के, दिल्ली सल्तनत, फर्स्ट 5 ईयर प्लान्स, डिफरेंट डिफरेंट कंट्रीज कौन सी कैस्पियन सी के पास, 7 हिल्स ऑफ रोम, 7 फील्ड्स ऑफ रेनबो रेवोल्यूशन, मलक्का स्टेट, एड्रियाटिक सी की कंट्रीज़ वगैरह को लेकर। तो देर आर मोर देन 200 निमोनिक्स जो आपको बहुत सारा फैक्चुअल डेटा याद करने में मदद कर सकते हैं, जिन्हें आप अपनी चीज़ों को, अब देखो ऐसा है कि सबकी अपनी अपनी डिमांड होती है, किसी को फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज़ वैसे ही याद हो जाती हैं, देन दे नो डोंट नीड टू गो थ्रू देम, बट किसी को वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरीज याद करने में बहुत प्रॉब्लम होती है, वो इन डेटा को यूज़ कर सकता है, एंड अपनी नीड्स के हिसाब से। इट्स नॉट नेसेसरी आपको सब चीज़ें याद करनी से, शेड्यूल्स ही याद करने हैं, टीयर्स ऑफ ओल्ड पीएम के, तो ये इजीली अवेलेबल हो जाएंगे। आपको सिटीजनशिप को लेकर के कैसे एक्वायर करना होता है, तो यू कैन यूज़ दिस वर्ड ब्रांड करके, बहुत सारी चीज़ें अलग अलग हिसाब से। 92nd अमेंडमेंट में 8 शेड्यूल में 4 लैंग्वेजेस यूज़ की हुई थी, तो उसमें बीडीएमएस आप यूज़ कर सकते हो, बीडीएस डिग्री को यूज़ कर सकते हो, कुछ कुछ में तो एक चीज़ के दो दो आपको निमोनिक्स मिलेंगे, ताकि आपको जो याद करने में आसानी है आप वो यूज़ कर सकते हो। तो कंट्री वाइज थे ये बहुत सारे देखोगे। तो रिवर्स और डैम प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं, उड़ीसा के अंदर हैं, तो उसका शॉर्टकट है जलापेट इज़ ए मैकेनिक इन उड़ीसा, बलीन हु लिव्स इन चिली, महा एंड हीरा स्पीक्स ओडिसी लैंग्वेज, तो महानदी और हीराकुंड डैम हो गया। तो रिवर के ऊपर कौन सा डैम है उसके हिसाब से भी देर आर मोर देन 200 जो आपको एग्जाम में बहुत यूजफुल रहेंगे। आंसर राइटिंग करते टाइम बहुत सारे जेन्युइन जो कीवर्ड्स होते हैं ना, जैसे कि आप एक 5 prong अप्रोच यूज़ करोगे, तो आप यू कैन मेंशन यूनिलेटरल, बायलेटरल, सब रीजनल, इस तरीके से। देन देयर आर सर्टेन थिंग्स लाइक आप 5F मेंशन करना चाहते हो कहीं पर, तो फूड, फीड, फाइबर, फ्यूल एंड फाइन केमिकल्स। उसी तरीके से आप और भी चीज़ें देखोगे, 4D करना हो, डिस्कस, डिबेट, डिसाइड, डिसरप्शन, फ्रॉम टॉप डाउन टू बॉटम, आप जैसे नीति आयोग में ये चीज़ यूज़ करते हैं। 3S में स्किल, स्केल, स्पीड, ऐसे मोर देन 400 हैं जो डिफरेंट डिफरेंट, आप GS 1 2 3 4 अपने ऑप्शनल में, एसेज में आप इस तरह के कीवर्ड यूज़ कर सकते हो, जैसे कि साफ नीयत, सही विकास, और लाइफ साइकिल बेस्ड अप्रोच, टेररिज्म एंड टॉक्स के नॉट गो टुगेदर, डबल एज स्वॉर्ड, और 3Ps में जो सूटेबल प्रोडक्ट, ट्रांसपेरेंट प्रोसेस, कमिटेड पीपल, ये एथिक्स में यूज़ हो सकता है। 5Is में इरिगेशन, इन्वेस्टमेंट, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, इंश्योरेंस, इंटेंसिफिकेशन, और विशफुल थिंकिंग, करप्शन इज इक्वल टू मोनोपोली प्लस डिस्क्रिप्शन माइनस अकाउंटेबिलिटी। 3F मतलब फंड, फंक्शन, ये सब करंट अफेयर में भी बहुत कवर होते हैं, तो वहाँ से सब कलेक्ट किए हुए डिफरेंट डिफरेंट टॉपर्स के आंसर की कॉपीज़ में से, एंड देन यू कैन यूज़ देम इन योर आंसर राइटिंग। आंसर राइटिंग की अपनी खुद की चेकलिस्ट भी आप यूज़ कर सकते हो, आप इसको जस्ट गेट प्रिंटेड, और फिर आप अपनी प्रेजेंटेशन खुद को टिक कर सकते हो कि ठीक है, यू हैव डन दिस पार्ट, यू हैव डन दिस पार्ट, आपकी हैंड राइटिंग एलिजिबल थी, आपके फैक्ट्स वगैरह थे। इवन आप अपनी ये शीट को प्रिंट करके अपने फ्रेंड को दे सकते हो आपस में, एंड देन योर फ्रेंड कैन आंसर इट टू यू कि ठीक है, ये वाली चीज़ तुमने ठीक की थी, और एक दूसरे के आप चेक कर सकते हो। उसी तरीके से क्वेश्चंस है बहुत सारे मेंस के क्वेश्चन को प्रैक्टिस करने के लिए, तो कुछ उसमें टर्मिनोलॉजीज़ हैं, तो GS 1 2 3 4 को ऐसे ऐसे अराउंड 400 से ज़्यादा क्वेश्चन है जो आप प्रैक्टिस कर सकते हो। एग्जैक्टली सेम जो प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन हैं उन्हीं के थीम्स के ऊपर बेस्ड हैं ये, और जस्ट वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि आप इनको वर्बली डिस्कस कर सकते हो, और एग्जैक्टली सेम थीम, सेम क्वेश्चन और सेम क्वेश्चन के कीवर्ड्स भी होते हैं यहाँ पर यूज़। देन वी हैव दिस डेली प्रोग्रेस ट्रैकर। डेली प्रोग्रेस ट्रैकर बड़ी गजब की चीज़ है। ये जिन लोगों को अपनी परफॉर्मेंस ट्रैक करने में दिक्कत होती है ना, प्रायोरिटाइज करने में क्या करना चाहिए क्या नहीं करना चाहिए, तो ये जब आप डाउनलोड करोगे ना, उसमें आपको पूरा हाउ टू का वीडियो होगा, उसमें आपको एग्जैक्टली दिखाया होगा मैंने कि आपको यहाँ टास्क में क्या एंटर करना है। ये मैंने थोड़ा स्क्रीनशॉट लिया था, तो आई थिंक इसकी क्वालिटी थोड़ी सी आपको डिग्रेडेड दिख रही होगी। इसमें होता क्या है ना, यहाँ पर अपना टास्क मेंशन करते हो, उस टास्क में आपको क्या करना है वो आप यहाँ मेंशन करते हो, उसका एक टारगेट रखते हो, उसमें आप खुद को मार्क्स देते हो, तो आपकी परसेंटेज आपको डेली पता चलती है, आपको 5 दिन का अपना एवरेज पता चलता है, एंड आपका एक ग्राफ प्रिपेयर होता रहता है यहाँ पर, जैसे कि ये रहा आपके सामने। अब आपने पॉलिटी का कोई काम करना था, आपको चैप्टर 5 करना है 2 घंटे में, टोटल आपको 10 मार्क्स थे, आपने खुद को पूरा कर लिया तो 10 मार्क्स दे दिए। तो आपकी फर्स्ट डे के आपने सारे काम कैसे कैसे किए, कोई काम आपने कम किया तो आपने खुद को 7.5 दिए, कोई काम आपने किया ही नहीं तो आपने 0 छोड़ दिया, तो अकॉर्डिंगली आपकी डेली परसेंटेज आपको पता चलती रहेगी। फिर आपको अपने 5 दिन की एवरेज मिल जाएगी कि आपका 5 दिन का 71% था। इस तरीके से अगर आप डेली का देखोगे, 5 दिन का आपका 85% से अगर ऊपर जाएगा ना, तो आपकी प्रिपरेशन सही चल रही है। तो ऐसा ही आपको ग्राफ मिलता रहेगा, अच्छा ठीक है, डे 1 मेरा ठीक था, डे 2 में मैं नीचे आ गया, देन डे 4 में थोड़ा मैंने इंप्रूव किया, डे 5 में मैंने बहुत इंप्रूव किया। ये ट्रैक करने में बहुत हेल्प करता है। जब आप डाउनलोड करोगे ना ये, तो आपको इसकी एक्सेल फाइल भी मिलेगी, और आपको इसमें हाउ टू की वीडियो मिलेगी 5-7 मिनट्स की, उसमें मैंने एक्जैक्टली बता रखा है कहाँ पे क्या टाइप करके आप इसको ईजिली यूज़ कर सकते हो। सेम से पैटर्न के ऊपर अपना एक रिपीटेशन का पाइपलाइन भी होता है, आप उसमें चीज़ें सोने से पहले आपको क्या करना है, सोते हैं से बाद में आपको क्या रिपीट करना है, ताकि आप भूलो ना। देर आर मैनी थिंग्स जो आपको एक दिन करनी होती है, दूसरे दिन करनी होती है, सुबह शाम। तो ये भी मैंने एक्जैक्टली हाउ टू वीडियो दिखा रखी है, यहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा एक्सप्लेन करूँगा तो टाइम लग जाएगा। यहाँ पे एक सैम्पल सा दिखा रखा है कि ऐसा कुछ आपको मिलेगा, फिर हाउ टू वीडियो से आप इसको एडिट करके अपना टॉपिक सेटअप कर सकते हो। कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल आर्टिकल्स हैं, बहुत जगह यूज़ करने होते हैं, GS 2 में तो पूरा का पूरा ही यूज़ करना होता है आपको, तो इनको याद करने के लिए आसान से एक फ्री में एक PDF है साथ में, आप बहुत ईजिली इसमें सर्च कर सकते हो, एंड यू कैन सिंपली यूज़ दैम। सेम तरीके से मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री की टाइमलाइन भी 1800 से नाना फडणवीस की डेथ से लेकर के, ये चीज़ें बहुत हेल्पफुल रहती हैं, इवन प्रीलिम्स में, मेंस में याद करने के लिए, फैक्चुअल डेटा मेंशन करने के लिए। प्रीवियस ईयर के मेंस की तरह आप क्वेश्चन देखोगे तो दोनों तरीके से हैं, ये टाइप वाइज हैं, लाइक पहले हिस्ट्री में आर्ट एंड कल्चर के, एंशियंट के अलग से, और सेम ही आपको आगे मिल जाएंगे। ये 1999 से हैं, तो ये पूरा का पूरा पेपर वाइज है, तो दोनों टाइप के आपको मिल जाएंगे, फिर वो आपकी चॉइस है आप कैसे यूज़ करना चाहते हो। देन वी हैव कोट्स वगैरह। अब जो कोट्स है ना, उनमें एक चीज़, दो चीज़ देखेंगे, एक तो टाइप वाइज है, लाइक एजुकेशन के सारे कोट्स हैं, ठीक है, और फिर है ऑथर वाइज, बेसिकली जो लीडर्स वगैरह थे उनके नाम के, लाइक गांधी जी की सारी कोट्स यहाँ पर हैं, अंबेडकर जी की हैं, अरिस्टोटल वगैरह की हैं। इसमें मैंने डिफरेंट क्या किया है, आई हैव ट्राइड टू पुट इन ब्रिंग इन द स्मॉलेस्ट कोट्स, जैसे कि अगर आप ऑफरा विनफ्री की देखोगे तो टर्न योर वुंड्स इनटू विजडम, ये बहुत जगह आप यूज़ कर सकते हो, इवन GS 1 2 3 4 ऐसे में ऑप्शन में कहीं यूज़ कर सकते हो। मैंने कोशिश ये की कि सबसे छोटी वाली जो कोट्स हो सकती है ना, मैक्सिमम पॉसिबल, उनको पुटअप करने की, क्योंकि उनको याद करना ईजी होता है। लंबे लंबे कोट्स को ना याद करने में बहुत दिक्कत होती है। देन टॉपर्स का कुछ डेटा है जो आपको बहुत अच्छे से आप इनको ट्रैक कर सकते हो कि यार किस टॉपर के कितने मार्क्स वगैरह कहाँ कहाँ आ रहे थे, तो आपको एग्जैक्टली परफॉर्म कहाँ करना है। तो 2014 से 2021 तक के टॉपर्स का कुछ डेटा है, यू कैन चेक देम कि यार किस टॉपर की परफॉर्मेंस कितनी ऊपर थी, तो किस सब्जेक्ट में मुझे कौन से टॉपर का कौन से नोट्स पढ़ने चाहिए, वो सब आपको मिल जाते हैं। बट आपको थोड़ा डेटा चाहिए होता है। एंड अलॉन्ग विद दिस आपको ये भी पता होना चाहिए कि कौन से ईयर में कितने लोगों ने कितना परफॉर्म किया, कितने सिलेक्शन रेट चल रहा है, उसके अलावा कौन सा एजुकेशन बैकग्राउंड के लोग हैं जिनके सिलेक्शन ज़्यादा हो रहे होते हैं, किस तरह के एग्जाम में कितना एंट्रेंस आ रहा होता है, कौन से ऑप्शनल में सक्सेस रेट कितना चल रहा है। तो ये सब डेटा यहाँ पर है, आप उनको यूज़ कर सकते हो अपनी प्रिपरेशन में, अपनी चीज़ों को प्लान करने के लिए। तो ये आपको एडवांटेज मिलता है। और भी ऐसी 4-5 और फाइल्स हैं, अभी सैम्पल है थोड़ा, तो मैंने कम चीज़ें आपको दिखाई हैं, और भी बहुत कुछ आपको साथ में मिलता है। अब बात करते हैं कंटेंट को डाउनलोड करने की, कुछ डिस्काउंट की, कुछ अपडेट्स की और कुछ वैलिडिटी की। तो जो आप वीडियो देख रहे हो, इसी वीडियो के डिस्क्रिप्शन में डाउनलोड का लिंक है, जब आप उस पर क्लिक करोगे तो सामने जो पेज है ये खुल जाएगा। अब इसमें डिफरेंट डिफरेंट चीज़ें हैं। सबसे पहले जो रेड में है, ये तो ओवरऑल है, यानी कि जो भी मैंने आपको कंटेंट दिखाया था प्लस में जो एडिशनल फ्री कंटेंट था वो भी आपको साथ मिलेगा। तो ये रेड वाले में ये पूरा का पूरा पैकेज एक साथ है। बट किसी को अगर पूरा पैकेज ना लेना हो, किसी को कुछ सेपरेट चीज़ें लेनी, जैसे सिर्फ निमोनिक्स या सिर्फ माइंड मैप या फिर सिर्फ प्रीवियस ईयर पेपर्स टाइप करके, तो वो अलग अलग जो लिंक्स हैं यहाँ से उनको डाउनलोड कर सकते हैं। जो अपडेट्स हैं वो सिर्फ ऑल इन वन यूपीएससी हैंड बुकलेट पर ही मिलेंगे, और अपडेट्स की वैलिडिटी 3 मंथ्स की होती है, यानी कि अगर आप आज परचेज करते हो तो आज की डेट से अगले 3 मंथ्स तक अगर कोई अपडेट जनरेट होता है, वैसे जो कंटेंट है वो मोस्टली आपको अपडेटेड ही मिलेगा, बट जस्ट इन केस अगर कोई अपडेट जनरेट होता है, इफ द क्रिएटर हैज, बेसिकली दिस इज द डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ द क्रिएटर, तो वो आपको आपके ईमेल पर ही मिल जाएगा। जब आप ये पीडीएफ डाउनलोड करोगे ना, तो ये आपको आपके ईमेल पर ही डिलीवर होगा सारा कंटेंट। और आप चाहो तो ये जो कोड है यूपीएससी 50 का, ये यूज़ कर सकते हो। ये सिर्फ आपको यूपीएससी हैंडी बुकलेट पर अवेलेबल होगा, तो आपका जो प्राइस है वो ऑलमोस्ट 50% तक रिड्यूस हो जाएगा। अगर आप चाहो तो दूसरी चीज़ें भी डाउनलोड कर सकते हो। जब आप परचेज कर लोगे तो आपको अपने ईमेल पर जाना है, वहाँ आपको सर्च करना है इंस्टामोजो। इंस्टामोजो सर्च करते ही आपको 2 ईमेल्स मिलेंगे, एक पे आपका पीडीएफ का बिल होगा और दूसरे में आपकी ये जो इंडेक्स पीडीएफ होगी जिसमें आपका ये कंटेंट होगा। तो अगर जस्ट इन केस आपको वो सर्च करने में इशू हो रहा हो, तो अपने ईमेल में आप इजीली सर्च करना इंस्टामोजो या फिर यूपीएससी हैंड बुकलेट, या फिर इस वीडियो के डिस्क्रिप्शन में टेलीग्राम चैनल का लिंक है, वहाँ से आप एडमिन को कॉन्टैक्ट करके भी अपने इस इशू के बारे में डिस्कस कर सकते हो, जस्ट इन केस अगर आपको ईमेल ना मिल रहा हो तो। तो कोई भी जो कम्युनिकेशन होगा अपडेट वगैरह का भी, वो भी सब ईमेल के थ्रू ही होगा। जब आप प्रोडक्ट को परचेज करते हो तो विद इन 7 डेज आप उस प्रोडक्ट को अपने डिवाइस में डाउनलोड करके सेव भी कर सकते हो, तो वो आप हमेशा के लिए आपके पास रहेगा। तो आप कर लीजिएगा, द मोमेंट आप परचेज करो उसको अपने डिवाइस में सेव कर लेना, अपना खुद का एक बैकअप क्रिएट कर लेना। सारी फाइल डाउनलोडेबल है, आप हमेशा के लिए लाइफ टाइम उन फाइल्स को अपने पास रख सकते हो। डाउनलोड का लिंक डिस्क्रिप्शन में है, क्विकली परचेज करो, अदरवाइज ये डिस्काउंट जो कूपन है ये कभी भी खत्म हो सकता है, एक्सपायर हो सकता है। And the next topic that we will be talking about is G20. So G20, in the previous topic also took the name of this particular group, and now we are here to discuss this in detail. So recently, the G20 summit happened in Brazil. The place is Rio de Janeiro. So imagine that you are on a stage with world leaders discussing how to make the planet better. So the theme was basically on the sustainable planet. All right. So this is really exciting. So since you're preparing for this very typical level of exam, you need to cover inside and details for this particular group, because in the year 2023, India conducted the summit and it holds importance till then. So why was this topic in the news? We have given an idea about this thing, and let's dig deeper inside this. Okay. Now we'll be starting from this section. All right. And again, I would like to ask you that imagine yourself now as an IAS officer. Okay. So you are the IAS officer. You have been given a task to organize a giant meeting like the G20. Okay. So the coordination, the diplomacy, and the protocol. See, this is quite challenging, right? Now, Brazil is hosting this summit. This is important because it shows the rising voice of the global south. All right, that's why this is important. And the countries like Brazil, India, South Africa, all these countries, they are coming together. Also, did you know that the African Union, we all know about this, na? This is a block of the 55 countries. They are the member states. It represents, this African Union, this represents almost 1.3 billion people. Okay. Now their inclusion in G20 is like adding a super important new player to the global cricket team. Okay, so make sure that you note down these details for your exam. India is basically responsible to make African Union part of G20. This is very, very important. Any examiner can ask this in your interview test also. So make sure, and we'll try to understand the significance of this further. Okay. Now let's jump to the key takeaways from this summit that happened in Brazil recently. We'll focus on each of the points here. Initially, it was about the social inclusion. So the global coalition for the local and the regional production, innovation, production, equitable access. Okay. So this thing, it was okay. Now here I asked you to behave like an IAS. Now think like an IPS officer. Okay. So you're standing in a rural area to oversee the welfare projects. Okay. And the G20's focus on the social inclusion means there will be more funding and there will be policies that will be targeting hunger and poverty. All right. Now I will give you a fact here. Okay. So as per the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, we all have known about this. There are around 690 million people worldwide who are suffering from hunger. And this is the data for the year 2019 only. Now this new global coalition that we are talking about here, it aims to lower this number of 690 million by strengthening the local vaccine production. All right. So this is very crucial after we have witnessed how the supply chains were disrupted during the time of COVID-19, such things. So will be commitment for all these basic needs, and this kind of alliance will target the hunger and poverty sections. Now, if you are now again think like an IFS officer, change your thinking. Okay, start focusing on the thought process. So you might be posted to a nation that is part of this task force, which is working on all these declarations. Okay, so a quick extra detail would be that India's own NDA. So this NDA is the NDC, the nationally determined contributions. Okay, so India's own NDC under this Paris Agreement is puts more stress on the renewable energy. Okay, so such as achieving about, we have the target of achieving 450 gigawatt of renewable capacity by the year 2030. So this is how you should remember these targets and facts. Just like you know about it, and the moment you talk about something like renewable energy, the fact should pop up in your mind. So you could be the diplomat who will help shape these global policies if you clear this exam. Okay. Then we are reforming the global governance institutions. Okay. Now you are an IAS officer. Okay. You will be looking at global finance. Okay. And this point is about reforming the World Bank and other multidimensional or such banks and other institutions. So they can better address the challenges like the poverty and hunger, and also including the climate change. So you are governing all these global institutions globally. Okay. Now we will try to link the article 253, the polity in this section. So this is how you have to remember the articles of the constitution. The point is coming, you need to know, okay, from polity, which section is connecting here. So article number 253 of the Indian Constitution, it gives the parliament the power to make any law for whole or any part of the country to implement such kind of international treaties. Okay, now that could be used to align Indian policies with G20s on these multilateral development banks reforms. Now, tax on the super rich. This is also a takeaway from the summit. Something happened. Again, assume yourself as an IAS officer. Okay, now you must be responsible for this kind of policy execution. Okay, so this new measure on taxing the super rich is a huge shift globally also, and there has been discussion about bridging the wealth gaps. The report of the Oxfam in the year 2022, it suggested that about 1% of the population holds nearly 46% of the global wealth. Okay, now the governments worldwide, they are looking for ways to address this imbalance. Fine. So these are the major key takeaways, and now we would like to discuss something about the global alliance of hunger and poverty. Okay, we'll put in some information here. So you might be the future bureaucrat. Okay, so these statistics, they are very mind blowing for you. Now think about 582 million. people who are facing hunger in the year 2030. Take yourself in the year 2030, there are 583 million people who are facing these issues of hunger. Okay. And this is like the entire population of the European Union. They are not having enough food. Okay. And concept like, India's this midday meal scheme, these are the concepts. And okay, so let me connect one more fact there. So the moment this thought, this is how we learn. Midday meal is coming, so and polities article should also pop up. So article number 24 from your Indian constitution, it talks about the ensuring child labor prohibition and also complementing the right to education. So this is where we connect the midday meal scheme, and this is where we connect the hunger and poverty. Okay. So India's midday meal scheme is one of the world's largest school feeding programs. It is benefiting more than 100 million children worldwide. So not worldwide, sorry, by mistake I said that, India. Now this new global alliance against hunger and poverty, this can learn from India's programs. The target of this would be to reach all those people using multiple efforts. So they will have voluntary partnerships. There are already 148 members, okay, and who are part of this alliance. So they're targeting to reach 500 million people, and they need more money to address all the issues. So this is just like some idea about that I've given to you. Now we focus on what is this G20. Okay. Now G20 is a group of 20 countries which are part of this. So G20 is a bigger group. Inside G20 we can also say G8. G8 doesn't exist now. Initially there was a group known as G8, but Russia was removed from this group because of the annexation of Crimea. And after that there is a group called G7. Now in these G7, if we add Russia and other of these countries also, which includes India, then it becomes the G20 group. Okay. So this was started in the year 1919, and the 2007 and the 2008 financial crisis that happened, it was the time which triggered the G20 summits. That was the main, triggering point. And the reason that they keep rotating the presidencies to give every major economy a chance to set up the agenda and shape the global policies, right? So the moment I'm stopping, I'm letting you think for the next word, which might fill in the blanks. So just think, why are we reading all these topics? Where will you use all these topics in the exam? Okay. So the purpose is clear. And until then, after that, there are annual summits which are happening on these rotation of presidencies. This is one data which if you want to make sure that you want to note down, then that's fine. Else you can just ignore and listen to it. So all these countries together, they make up around 85% of the world's GDP, 75% of the global trade, and all these countries, they have around two-thirds of the world's population. Since the two most populous countries, India and China, are already part of this thing, so it's not difficult to say that two-thirds of the countries of the world's population is already part of this group. Okay. Now we'll try to understand G20 at a crossroads. It reveals a limitation as a global governance architecture. So we all are assuming that G20 is going to be a big group, major countries, UK, US, Russia, India, China, then Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Brazil, Indonesia. Major countries are all right, Japan, France, Canada, Italy. But there are limitations. Can they actually form the global governance architecture? Can all these countries lead the whole world towards a better future? Now that's where you have to understand. Now you think like an Indian Foreign Service officer. You are a diplomat. Okay. So you have to navigate through all these tensions. Okay. So number one is the representation's inequity. Okay. And since we have included the African Union, which is 55 countries, but we have not renamed this as G21, though it is supposed to be renamed, but it has still not happened yet. Okay. So is it actually representing the global scenario? This is one of the challenging things. Then there are diplomatic fragmentation. So fragmentation means there are things are broken into pieces. Okay. And there are some key leaders who were absent. Okay. Argentina has opposed the sustainable development at some points. Okay. Some major economies, they are not happy with this. We talked about this key takeaway of taxing the super rich. Some countries are not happy with this idea, like US, Germany, Argentina, not happy with the taxing the wealthy people. Okay. So this is kind of a roadblock that these countries are creating. Then there are some already planned goals which are not being utilized yet. Okay, like they are also asking for reforming the UN Security Council. So now the UN Security Council, it has P5, the permanent 5 members. Some countries are demanding to extend this P5 further to add India, Japan. So India and like Germany is also willing to become part of this, but it is not still not happening. Then we have we planned for the COP29. There were some targets about the climate change. They have not been realized yet. Then we have the structural and the operational other weaknesses here. So some decisions are being made, but they are not binding on the member countries. Okay, which makes it limited because we cannot enforce them until unless it is binding on them. Okay, and everything that is happening in this G20 summits, it is happening without any formal charter. That means there is no one to take an account of this. Okay, then it's very difficult to scrutinize the process, the task, the targets, the agendas. They are all just part of the discussion, but on the ground level, they are not being executed properly. Okay, so many exam questions, they focus on difference between legally binding versus the non-binding global agreements. So you have to understand that G20 is about a soft law. We call it a soft law approach, and it relies on moral and diplomatic pressure rather than enforcement. That's why these structural and the operational weaknesses, they come up. Then there are other organizations like BRICS is also working fine, SCO is also working fine, like India, Russia, China. They're part of all these groups. So sometimes the relevance of G20 does not hold too much. Then comes, how can we enhance the effectiveness of these G20 summits? So we can look for a permanent secretariat. Okay, and if India champions a permanent secretariat for the G20, it will require bridging multiple bureaucracies also. Okay, so then there has to be clear division of labor, like focus on G20 and focus on G7. So what we can do, G7 can be given a section of geopolitical issues, and G20 can take care of the monetary stability, the trade openness, poverty, education. Like divide the work between these groups. It will be easy to handle. Then there are some middle income members. You have to empower them. Okay, so countries like Argentina, Brazil, India, South Africa, they can take active diplomatic roles here. Then accountability framework. So accountability framework has a connection through the permanent secretariat and making it binding for all. So once it is binding, then you also need to frame rules that who will keep a check on everything, who will track the commitments, who will monitor the implementation. All these things will take part once the permanent secretariat setup happens and a formal charter is also formed. So the charter formation is also not there. Then there are other agencies like WHO, UNEP, UNDP. Okay. So they are also doing some of the major works which are being part of this, the global public goods like monetary stability, trade openness, poverty, education. All these things are also being done by UN agencies. Now, what we can do to make sure that the duplication of all these efforts does not happen, the duplicate funding does not happen. Okay. Then we talked about the global south. So since African Union is now part of it, there is a big voice of the global south, and also this summit happened in the Brazil, the 18th summit. So the global south is being involved. Okay, but we need to advocate this thing further. All right, so we have to raise concerns about equitable representation in other institutions like IMF and World Bank also. Okay, where the voting power, it heavily favors the developed nations. So these are the things which can enhance the effectiveness of future G20 summits. Okay. So before we end this topic, remember that you are a future officer. Some of you will become IAS, some of you will become the IPS, IFS, So your role in turning these international declarations into the on-ground action is very, very crucial. And for the exam point of view, focus how the G20 decisions they tie into India's policies, from climate change to the digital economies. And one extra nugget I will give you, the Article 51 of the Indian polity, the DPSPs, remember, it encourages the state to foster respect for international laws and treaties. So DPSPs and the fundamental duties, focus on them. Which one is Article 51, fundamental duty or DPSP? You need to remember everything. So that's the spirit behind participating in the groups like G20, the Article 51. Okay, so keep learning and keep preparing. Okay, I'll add on more values in the upcoming topics for you. In the topic number 2.3, we'll try to understand that on the sidelines of this G20 summit, that we just read in the previous topic, another summit happened, which was the India and Australia Annual Summit. Annual means something which happens every year. This was the second India Australia Annual Summit. It happened in the same place. So, just imagine how exciting it is to see two major nations, India and Australia, discussing the big ideas amidst a global gathering. So, by the way, like Brazil hosted the G20 summit, and so this place, Rio de Janeiro, this is famous for Christ, the Redeemer. Okay, remember this. And always connect these global events to your exam preparation. Questions can come from unexpected angles. Okay, this is the map of Australia. There are some divisions: the Northern Territory, the South Australia, the Western Australia, the Queensland. Just like in India, we have the Northern India, Northeast states, and on the western side, it touches the Indian Ocean. On the top, it has the Timor Sea, then Arafura Sea, the Gulf of Carpentaria, the Coral Sea, Tasman Sea. These are the places whose name they can keep popping up they keep popping up in the exam. So just have an idea about the Bass Strait, where are in which two major points it is located, between which then Tasmania and the Victoria region of Australia. Just read them, nothing more is required. Okay, so we'll go through the key highlights of this summit, then we'll try to understand the significance of such bilateral relations, India and Australia, then what are the issues between the two countries' relation, and in the end, the way forward. This is a small topic, not very difficult to understand. Okay, easy to understand. Just listen to this. Okay, so initially they will be talking about the clean power. So India Australia Renewable Energy Partnership was launched. So under this renewable energy partnership, both the countries, they're looking at solar panels, clean hydrogen, and the energy storage. So did you know that India aims to install more than 450 gigawatt renewable energy capacity? So they are targeting also around 500 gigawatt by the year 2030. Okay, and Australia has vast open spaces which are ideal for the solar and the wind farms. So this synergy could shape the future of sustainable energy across the Indo-Pacific region. Okay, so connect renewable energy with India, the map of Indian Ocean, like this. Then AIBX program, Australia India Business Exchange. And now picture yourself again as an IAS officer. Okay, so you are analyzing the trade ties of these countries. Now AIBX is, see, do not think that if you become an IAS officer, you will be posted only in some of the district. You will have the central deputation, the ministerial deputations. You will be going to the ministries. You will be working for the other countries also. Okay, so AIPX will encourage industries, big and small. They will explore each other's markets. And Australia is known for the advanced agri technology and the mining equipment also. So while India is excelling in pharmaceuticals and the IT services, Australia is excelling in agriculture technology and mining equipment. Now this kind of extended collaboration means there will be more job opportunities for both the nations, and potentially this will boost the economy of both the countries. Okay. Then there was also an agreement to renew the Joint Declaration on Defense and Security Cooperation, which they will take care later in 2025. Okay. So this is huge. You have to understand this thing also. Think about the role of defense ties in shaping the strategic relations. India and Australia, they have been conducting joint exercises like the Pitch Black is happening. Okay. Now I taught this Pitch Black in one of the previous topics, so I remember this. Then OS Index. Okay. These exercises are happening. So, renewing these agreements, it solidifies the maritime security framework. And as a future IPS officer, or you may be like a foreign diplomat in the Indian Foreign Service, how would you leverage such a defense pact to ensure the regional stability? So the defense collaboration isn't just about weapons, it's about trust, technology sharing, and joint research also. So now we'll move towards the significance of India and Australia bilateral relations. Initially, we'll talk about the strategic partnership. Okay, so here I will give you a daily dose of the exam take. The Indo-Pacific region is the heart of the global politics. Heart of the global politics now. Okay, so through the Quad, India and Australia, they are focusing on freedom of navigating the open sea lanes. Again, think like an IAS officer. You are at some secretariat level. You are doing a job in the ministries. Okay, so how would you handle the rising tension between the South China Sea and other Indo-Pacific countries. This is the region. Okay. Now, this kind of initiative, the significance of AIIPUIP, Australia, India, Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative Partnership. These are the things which will offer us solutions to all such maritime challenges, disaster relief, sustainable use of marine resources, and etc. Okay. Then comes the economic and the trade thing. Now, try to understand this $30 billion is not a small amount, right? So ECTA, the Economic Cooperation and the Trade Agreement. This agreement will aim to reduce the tariff on the various goods. Okay. Also, remember the article number 246 of the Indian Constitution. It gives the Parliament the power over the foreign trade. Very, very important. So just remember about foreign trade, and whenever there is something about foreign trade comes, write down this article 246. So when you become an IRS officer, Indian Revenue Service, you will handle the custom revenue from import. Now, this kind of trade deal can also help our domestic industries export more, especially in the textiles and the pharma. So keep your notes on these synergy points handy for the exam essays also. Okay. Then the supply chain resilience initiative is already there between India, Australia, Japan. This was, I believe, this is you will find in most of the mock tests also. Now imagine again, put yourself in the position of an Indian police service officer. You have to secure a stable supply of these critical minerals, and this is not just economy, this is a matter of national security, and you are the one who is handling these national security issues in the future. You are the IPS officer. Think about it. Lithium is so crucial for the electric vehicles and the battery storage, so we want to reduce the dependency on a single country. Okay, how we will do this thing? So this kind of partnership with India and Australia, it will help India's Make in India initiative, give it more push for the electric vehicles and their manufacturing. Okay, so this is how you have to think. This is how you have to connect the topics with each other. Okay, next we have the green energy cooperation. So now green is the future, right? Both the government, Indian as well as the Australian, they have very big goals. India wants to be a green hydrogen hub, and Australia has abundant renewable resources. Now, the synergy could fast track technology transfers, research, and the mass scale production. If you are an Indian Foreign Service officer, how will you negotiate these environment friendly deals? Now, this is a global priority that will also secure a sustainable planet. Okay, so they are planting a task force. Okay, Australia India Green Hydrogen Task Force and India Australia Solar Task Force will be the group of people who will be intellectual. They will take this cooperation further ahead. Then the defense cooperation. Okay, now you have to coordinate between the Ministry of Defense and other ministries to push these agreements forward. Okay, so remember that the Indian Air Force, okay, and then there is Australia's Australian Air Force. They have collaborated during the exercises to improve the tactical skills. Now, the defense deals, they also spark technology transfer, which uplifts the domestic defense industry under the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. That's where the defense cooperation also helps the two countries and India itself also. So the two countries are also thinking on the regional and the multilateral cooperation. So as a future administrator, you have to keep eyes on these forums. Okay. So for example, like the G20 is there, Indian Ocean Rim Association is there. Okay. So these forums, they're discussing everything from the global health to the digital economy. Like just Indian Ocean Rim Association, it fosters security and the economic cooperation among countries which are bordering the Indian Ocean. Now, India is also pushing for the permanent seat in the UN Security Council. Okay, so these are the other regional and multilateral cooperations where India and Australia, their partnership can be helpful. Then the people to people ties. Okay, so I'll give you a fun fact here. Over 7 lakh people of the Indian origin, they live in Australia. ऑस्ट्रेलिया में 7 लाख लोग रहते हैं जो भारतीय हैं, which makes it a major diaspora community. Okay, so with very simple visas, young Indians, they're getting to explore education and the job opportunities there. So you get to become an Indian Foreign Service officer, and you are posted in Australia you will work closely on such agreements. You will ensure the protection of the Indian workers who are living abroad and also strengthen the bilateral relations with them. Then comes the science and tech part. So if you are a science lover, you need to understand that missions like the Gaganyaan mission, है ना? India's Gaganyaan mission, and so it has plans to send the astronauts into the space soon, right? So we can collaborate with Australia. Okay, Australia also has some plans about future like this on telemetry means. They will be sharing the ground facilities and the data for better space mission tracking. So this is not just about the rocket science, it's about building a robust ecosystem of innovation and research and development. So if you are thinking like an officer, you have to formulate policies that will boost the tech tie-ups and the space explorations between the two countries, India and the Australia. So think in the term of, when you start thinking like an officer, you start to behave like an officer. That's when you become, and you deserve more what you become. But there are issues in India and Australia relationships, right? You have to manage security at the port, okay? And you need to realize that how big these negotiations can be. Okay. Then CECA, the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, has been in talks since 2011. Australia's strict quality check on the import is also affecting India's agriculture export. So you have to balance what is consumer protection while boosting the trade. This is a very classic policy challenge for India. Then, so pharmaceutical pricing along with the agricultural exports, these two are very much controlled by Australia. Then about the rise of extremism and the anti-India activity. So if you are posted in the Ministry of Home Affairs, okay, and so these incidents, they aren't just law and order issues, they also affect the cultural diplomacy and the diaspora well-being. So maintain harmony abroad is crucial for India's image and safeguarding the peace. So the joint intelligence sharing, these things can be considered very, very specifically. It will help us tackle extremism very swiftly. So there were some recent incidents that happened, the Hare Krishna temple, the Shiv Vishnu temple, they were vandalized. Vandalized means the statues, the idols, they were broken by the hooligans. They entered the temple, they broke them down, and they raised the slogans against the Indian community there. Then the stalled nuclear energy cooperation. Stalled means the progress has been stopped for some particular reason. So if you are an officer of the foreign service, you have to navigate these complexities. Okay, this is the task that you'll be given about the nuclear energy. So although Australia has a huge amount of uranium reserves, but the supply demand is very strictly oversighted by other agencies, like the International Atomic Energy Agencies. They keep a very strict oversight on these reserves. And other than this, the other economic and the environmental concerns are also there, so which always create hurdles in these cooperations. So you have to think like bridging these gaps. So you have to take some careful diplomatic decisions to clear these terms of trade. Okay, then when it comes to the visa issue, so you have to remember how the visa policies can make or break any academic dreams for many Indians. Students from India, they go to the other countries for education. So the Australia's universities, they thrive on the international students. So a massive fee hike will reduce that influx. You have to balance the educational and the economic considerations. This becomes very, very vital there. These decisions, they have like far-reaching social impacts. Now, since we have identified many, many issues and how you as an officer can think about in these terms of issues, how do you move ahead? What to do further? आगे का रास्ता क्या होगा? Okay, so I'll give you some more directions into those things where we connect this particular point with other topics. Like connect this with the article number 253 of your Indian polity. So the 253 will empower the central government to make laws for implementing international agreements, right? Now finalizing the CECA, the Comprehensive Economic and okay, what word? Economic Cooperation Agreement. This can dramatically lower the tariffs and the barriers. Okay, and it will boost the economies of both the nations, right? So always connect the dots between constitution provision and the international trade agreement. So that's how you stand out in your UPSC will answers. Then you have to strengthen the strategic and the security ties. So the Indian Navy and the Royal Australian Navy, they can set up some joint maritime domain awareness programs, right? So we are looking at the greater intelligence sharing and training exercises. You remember that the non-traditional threats, like the cyber attacks, they also require very advanced tech collaboration. Now remember, the future of warfare is anyway going to be digital. So we have to focus on strengthening these ties with each other, the two countries. Then cooperating in the Indo-Pacific region. So as we said, the Indo-Pacific region is the heart of the geopolitics in the world. So the nations of the Pacific Islands, okay, they may be small, but they hold strategic positions. India and Australia can offer them some alternative development options, like from education scholarship to infrastructure projects, right? And this approach will help them maintain a balanced power equation in the region. And the last point of the way forward would be addressing the extremism, like what we saw in the kind of vandalism incidents happening in Melbourne City. So you will know the intelligence sharing as an officer is like great key to prevent any kind of extremist acts. So holding cultural events, community outreach programs, fostering the understanding between the community, these are some of the steps that can be taken. Sometimes the simplest step, like fostering dialogues, they can resolve any deep rooted issue also. So keep that in your mind in your mains exam, essays, and the interview as well. Okay. So that's it for this topic. Australia relations, they cover everything from trade and tech to defense and diaspora. So next time you open your books, remember the bigger picture. The international relation isn't just about deals. It's about the real people living in those countries, real people dealing with these situations. Okay. There are shared challenges. There are mutual growths options available. Okay. So that's where we end this topic and we are moving towards the next one. Hello G. Now we are on topic number 2.4. We will be talking about the relations of India and Germany. All right. So initially we'll try to understand why this topic was in news. So the German Chancellor of Germany, his name is Mr. Olaf. He flew down to India to discuss how we can work more closely together. So it's like, planning a group project where the two countries will be sharing their ideas. Now, if you are an IPS officer, so imagine guiding an international security meeting between India and Germany. How will you ensure that both the nations they benefit while safeguarding India's interests? So keep that scenario in mind as we move forward. Okay. Now trying to understand what more happened through this news thing, we'll understand a few ideas about the two countries. 2024 is like was like a big celebration year. So this is like the 25th year of the strategic partnership between the two countries. So India and Germany they signed this in the year 2000 and 50 years of the scientific cooperation as well. So imagine this as a golden jubilee. Okay. So and if you are an IAS officer, you might be tasked to organize a grand event in New Delhi to highlight India's tech progress in space because we are celebrating the 50th anniversary. So these kind of anniversaries they become very very important in the eyes of the examiner. Okay, and it will not be just limited to space. It will have AI. It will have renewable energy as well. Okay, so I'll give you an interesting fact here. The first intergovernmental consultation between the India and Germany. All right, it happened in the year 2011, the first one. And by the seventh one, now we are on the seventh one, right? So we are looking at the advanced areas, like we are focusing on the quantum computing. It's like leveling up in a video game. So each level gets tougher, but it becomes more rewarding also. Okay, let us move ahead, try to understand what is the significance, what is the importance of the relation between these two countries. Okay, before this, I would like you to have a look at the map of European area. So this is Germany. This is France, this is Spain, this is Italy. The four major countries are close to each other. They share boundaries alternative to each other. And this is UK. So this is the English Channel. So this is the sea lane between France and UK. This is a very popular point where people swim across English Channel from France to UK and then UK to France. Okay, and then this is Denmark. This is the Northern Ireland. This is the North Sea. Then we have the Scandinavian countries, the Norway, Sweden, Finland. They are here. Also try to understand Poland is also here, close to Germany, shares boundary with Germany, and very important, the Mediterranean Sea. So this is the Gibraltar area. Okay, remember these things. They are very very important for your map. This timeline you can avoid. No need to remember such timelines. They are not asked in the exams like this thing. Okay, but we'll try to understand the significance of the two countries' relationship. Okay, so let's talk business here for the between the two countries. So Germany is our top European body in the trade. So we are clocking like massive $33 billion. Okay, in year 2023 only we focused on $33 billion, and we are just waiting for the data of 2024 soon. So this is like a huge chunk of money that is moving back and forth. Now, if you are into an Indian foreign service, okay, so like you are the diplomat, imagine yourself. So your part of the job is to attract more German investment. How will you convince the other diplomat that they should invest in India? Okay. Again, I'll remind the same article, the article number 253 of the Indian Constitution, which will allow the parliament to make laws for implementing any international treaty or agreement, right? This means if India wants to tweak any policy, they could bring in German funds. They can be, they allowed by article number 253. Think about how many jobs you could create for the youth. Since Germany is the ninth largest FDI investor, FDI is the foreign direct investment. Okay. And also India's large and growing consumer market is a point of attraction for Germany. They can provide their skilled labor and their other technologies to India. Coming towards the climate and sustainability thing, now climate warriors are already there. Okay. And Germany isn't just about cars and machines and tools. They are also funding the climate friendly projects in India. So there's like 12 billion euros. This is the exact amount they have invested in India. So imagined, picture building solar parks across Rajasthan. Okay, imagine that you are the one who is head of the project. You are been given the task. You go out in the Rajasthan, build up a massive solar park for the country and help the country to increase the solar energy, renewable energy. So this is the kind of task that the secretary level people are assigned. Okay, and they develop some eco-friendly farming in the lush fields of Punjab. Okay, or maybe like you are an IPS officer, so there could be links of maintaining the security in these areas while these projects are being implemented. Okay, these are the things which keeps on happening. So Germany is also part of CDRI and ISA. So ISA is International Solar Alliance. It was started by India and France together, and CDRI is also an initiative through India. Then technology and innovation. So the German Indo Science Tech Center, Indo German Science and Tech Center, it funds nearly 49 projects. Okay, now these are the projects which they focus on things like bioengineering, okay, biotech and more. So you have, suppose that you are given a task for establishing a new research park in Bengaluru. Okay, so you would coordinate with IGSTC, this particular group, to build the labs. These labs will encourage the women scientists. Okay, and I will add one more information here. The first Indian satellite, the Aryabhat, which was launched in the year 1975. Till then, India is making strides in the space tech, and Germany has helped in many such projects, including the Aryabhat. Some technology help was taken from Germany also in those days. Now, with Germany's collaboration, we can aim for the advanced quantum research projects. Okay, maybe the next big space experiment could be an Indian-Germany joint mission. Who knows, right? Now let's talk about the cool part: defense and security. So Germany and India's 2006 agreement, it created specialized groups to handle the challenges like terrorism and cyber threats. Now, Germany is also eyeing on keeping its eye on the project 75I. So, under this, India is building 6 submarines for the Indian Navy, like constructing the top-notch stealth machines for the coastal defense. Now, if you are an officer, imagine the behind the scene of negotiations, which are needed to finalize such a deal. So, by the way, the Indian Navy's motto is Sam no Varunaha. That means, may the Lord of the Ocean be auspicious unto us. So, we do conduct the joint exercises like Milan, Passex, Tarang Shakti. These exercises, these help both the countries, India and Germany, to, share tactics, upgrade the naval skills, etc. Another significance is diversification of the trade partners. So, what the importance of India and Germany relationships is diversification. So, many European countries, including Germany, they're adopting the China plus one approach. What is this China plus one approach? This means they are looking beyond China for manufacturing and investment. And India wants to step in. And imagine yourself that you are being given a task to strategize how to attract how to attract Germany and the companies of Germany to set their shops in India. Okay, so we have to understand, European Union's decision that they have imposed a slab of 38.1% tariff on the Chinese electric vehicles in the year 2024. This shows how seriously they are trying to balance trade with China and India. They do not want to depend only on China. That's what the purpose of doing all this is. So for India, this is an opportunity. Okay, with our initiatives like Make in India, we can fill this gap and create more local manufacturing also, and it will help us in export as well. So maintaining the relationship will also be done, and local production will also increase. There are some challenges in the relationship between India and Germany. Let us try to understand these challenges, because not everything is sunshine and rainbows. So we have this carbon border adjustment mechanism. So what is this? We try to understand that this is like a toll tax for the carbon heavy goods. Okay, so like you are an officer, you are dealing with economic security, you will see how much such policies are impacting India's export. And then there are other interesting details, like in Germany has invested 4 times more in China in comparison to India. This is also a problem. So this is a challenge for India, because Germany has already invested there. What to do? So that might change also in future, but only if India simplifies the rules and processes. Remember the GST, the goods and the services, which was launched in the year 2017. Okay, this was first step in such a direction, that India is starting to rationalizing the tax slab so that we can attract more investors from the other countries. All right, and so India's foreign policy is also guided by concept like punch shield. So this is where the point of strategic and geopolitical differences comes into picture. So we have the 5 principle of peaceful existence, right? And balancing these principles with the global issues is like very tricky. That's where India's relationships are more stable, because India is planning in a very strategic way. So this is some kind of international drama that keeps going on. Sometimes Russia, Ukraine, sometimes it is Israel, Palestine, but it becomes an issue in the relationship between India and Germany also. Then the major kicker is China's role. Germany is still relying a lot on China for the trade part. So while the USA and the Japan, they are openly backing India, Germany must weigh its options very carefully. And if you are an officer, you are given a task to go out and attract Germany so that they invest more in India. How will you do that? So Germany is sometimes hesitant to criticize China also. How will you handle such a negotiation? Okay. And you need to remember this, China is Germany's biggest trading partner of goods. They have, in the year 2022, they hit more than 245 billions. And India just did 33 billion in 2033, 23. So how will we match this 33 billion with 245 billion? That's massive, right? China's economic partnership with Germany. Then the human rights criticism option. Okay, this is happening everywhere, and this is a topic of human rights. Germany has voiced concern about Kashmir and press freedoms also in India. So which sometimes rubs India's in the wrong way. And so if you get selected, you are given a training, your training is happening on some diplomatic missions. So maybe they'll give you a task that you need some great diplomatic skills, how to manage these conversations. So imagine yourself sitting on those chair, dealing with the German diplomats. How will you work on these things? So from here, I'd also like to add the article number 19, the fundamental rights of the Indian Constitution, which guarantees the freedom of speech, but with some reasonable restrictions. Okay. So, balancing the diplomatic laws and international views, that can be a tightrope walk, but that's diplomacy for you, right? Okay. Moving ahead, how can we improve things? What is our way forward? How can we move and make all those shortcomings better so that the relationship between the two countries keeps growing? Number one is the free trade agreement, the India European free trade agreement. So this will be like the ultimate cheat code in a video game. It will unlock billions of trade for both the countries. So if you're like a brand new IRS officer, you might be responsible to implement the new tax regulations under this free trade agreement. Okay. Remember, Germany alone does around $250 billion with China. How much more we can reach after this agreement? Okay. Let's see if we can level up together. And the Indo-Pacific engagement is happening. So Germany has already realized that this region is not just about beaches and palm trees. It is a huge economic hub. Germany wants to invest more here. Okay. They want to do joint naval drills. They want to help build ports or highways. Huh? And you could be one of the officer who will be protecting the seas. You would be coordinating the international naval exercises. Okay. And just to mention that Indian Navy has already done joint drills with several countries, US to Australia under the Malabar exercise. Then Germany's addition could also make the group even stronger. Then collaboration in clean tech. So clean tech is future, okay? In the electric cars, green hydrogen, solar farms, it's all happening now. Germany has some of the world's best engineers, and India has the brilliant mind, has enormous market potential. So if you're an IFS officer, you would scout for the areas where the Indian labs can start up and partner with the German companies. So also to mention here that Indian government has launched the National Green Hydrogen Mission, which has a budget of almost 20,000 crores. So we are hoping to make India a global hub for the green hydrogen through such initiatives. Then the last one, supply chain resilience. So think about the chip shortage that the world has been facing recently. So India and Germany together, they can collaborate on semiconductor plants. They can cut the dependency on China, right? And, yeah, and just try to understand, what if you are an IAS officer and you are given the task that you have to push for joint venture in places like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka. Okay, these are the places which are known for their industrial hubs, right? So India's PLI scheme, we have this production linked incentive scheme. This scheme can encourage the high tech manufacturing. It will include the electronics, pharmaceuticals, etc. So when the Germany joins, it will be a win-win situation. There will be more factories, there will be more jobs, there will be more tech initiative like this. So Make in India will also grow along with this, right? So that's it about this topic. We had a comprehensive look at the Indian and Germany relationships. So whether it is defense, whether it is trade or clean energy, there's a lot happening behind the scenes. And as you're preparing for this exam, like UPSC, state BCS, you can note down the most important details from these topics. So they can definitely pop up in your exam. Okay. So stay curious and keep learning these topics. Okay, so our next topic 2.5, India and Italy relations. This is also going to be on similar terms because in the same G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, there was a meeting that happened between the Prime Minister of India and Italy. It was a bilateral. So bilateral means two-sided meeting. Okay. So the synergy between these two nations has a deep historical backdrop. Okay. And you are preparing for this competitive exam. So stick around because this is crucial for your exam preparation. Okay. Let's dive in. Imagine yourself that you are analyzing the G20 as an IAS or an IFS officer. Now, the G20 summit in Brazil is where the key global decisions will took place recently. So India's Prime Minister and Italy's Prime Minister is Giorgia Meloni. They came together. They launched a strategic plan for the year 2025 to 2029. Okay. Now remember that Italy was earlier in China's BRI. This is very, very crucial information that I'm giving to you. Okay. But they stepped out. They shifted the focus to the new partnerships like with India. And this uniting was a turning point that will cement India and Italy's ties on a global stage. So the diplomatic relations started in the 1947, and so far we have a strategic partnership. There is also we have a defense cooperation agreement. Now let us have a look at the key highlights of this meeting that happened. Okay, in the simpler terms, India and Italy, they want to ramp up the trade in the high tech areas, like semiconductors, automotive, etc. Okay, so for instance, India aims to reduce the dependency on imported chips, and Italy's advanced manufacturing expertise can be a game changer for us. Now, think about the local jobs that it could create in cities like, Pune, and then we have Bangalore also. This is how it is going to help us in economic cooperation. Then we have to look towards the connectivity section. Okay. So you are an aspirant officer, right? So you put yourself in their shoes. How will you make IMEC a success? We have read this topic recently, right? But with India's port like Mumbai and Italy's port like Genoa. So there is a very popular port in Italy, but is it by the name of Genoa? Okay. And so, we could streamline the trade routes. We can lower the cost and the boosting, it will help in boosting the trade also. So IMEC is projected to reduce the transit time for goods by almost 40%. We talked about this in the topic, right? And this is huge for the global supply chains. Anything which reduces the time by 40% is very, very, very efficient then. Okay. Next we have is the science and tech. How are we going to collaborate in this particular section? So, here this is the point where the tech savvy folks they will rejoice. So, India is known for its IT services. At the same time, Italy is known for the robotics thing. They have very good understanding and the knowledge of robotics. So, the collaboration of these two countries, India and Italy, will spark new artificial intelligence startups in the world of digitalization, right? And imagine the next generation robotics lab being set up in Bangalore or Chennai, and we'll be working with the top Italian universities for all these things. Think of the students of Indian universities going to Italy's university for the exchange programs, right? So these kind of initiatives, this Indo-Italian Innovation Incubation Execution Program, these initiatives will benefit you if you are studying science for the civil services. So remember the name, okay? Then further we have the space sector, also very crucial for this kind of partnership. So you have to envision that you are leading the delegations of ISRO, and they are coordinating with the Italian Space Agency on a moon mission. Now ISRO has made history with Chandrayaan missions. So you have to team up your Indian team with the Italy's scientist. That means you will get new instruments, you will have more data sharing, you will have advanced research in the cosmic radiation, right? And this is going to be a giant leap for India's space diplomacy. Then we move towards the energy transition. Again, very, very crucial for this partnership. So India wants to be a global leader in the green energy, from solar power to Rajasthan. Like we have this thing, Rajasthan's desert area. We can set up big solar parks there. And this will help in providing biofuels in the rural areas. And Italy has an experience with the renewable technology, right? So think about this synergy of these two countries. We will have more solar parks. We will have more green jobs. We will be able to tackle the climate change in a much more efficient manner. Okay, and I would like to add a fact here. Italy has targeted around 55% of their carbon emissions reduction by the year 2030. So they are working in this direction. So collaborating with countries like Italy and with such other alliances like the Global Biofuel Alliance and the International Solar Alliance, India could make their own targets more achievable, right? So in the key highlights, we have the last section, that is the defense cooperation. We'll try to understand this thing. So if you are an IPS officer and the concept of national security is easy for you to understand. So this meeting will pave ways for better collaborations, because Italy has a very wonderful defense technology. They have good hold on them. It will complement India's push for the self-reliance. Then when we talk about the Atmanirbhar Bharat, right? So you might see advanced naval vessels or the co-developed drones which will be patrolling the Indian Ocean. So not to mention, but it is going to strengthen India's maritime security strategy in the Indo-Pacific region also. Okay, so this was just the highlights of the meeting that happened recently. Now we'll move toward the basic understanding of the two countries' relationships. Okay, we'll try to cover these points. So this goes way back. Trade, culture, stories, they have been exchanged since the 13th century with India as well as the Italy. And do you know that there is a small museum in the city of Venice, which is dedicated to partially to Marco Polo's journey, and it has references of his travels to India. He was, Marco Polo. We all have heard his name in the history books when we read them. So it's amazing to know that how these old roots they laid the foundation for today's modern ties. Okay, so now you are for me you are the future IRS officer. You are the future IAS officer, and I want you to picture yourself that you are analyzing the foreign policy shift. Okay, and Italy is the first G7 nation that has left the Belt Road Initiative of China. Right now, Italy is aligning with India's Indo-Pacific vision. This means more presence of Indian Navy in the Mediterranean and reciprocal support from Italy. So this is going to be a very significant pivot in the global geopolitics. One that can reshape the trade and the security alliances in future. So when it comes to the economic section, we'll try to understand the business relations here. Okay. Now the numbers they matter. Okay, because in the competitive exams like UPSC, when you are writing the mains exam, when you are giving the interview, you need to have a strong hold on the data, on the figures. So India's export range from textile to machinery. That's where you have to bring your understanding. So since 2023, both the sides they have a steady rise in engineering goods trade. Now what will be the next step? So possibly we are focusing on technology driven ventures and some green energy investment so that we can push this 14.5 billion trade to further. We can also target this up to 30 billion US dollars. This is how we should be targeting them. So when it comes to the foreign direct investments, so Italy does not hold a very good rank. It is into double digit, but we can, if we increase this trade, then this number can also be improved. Then checking about the defense and security, how are the two countries dealing in these sections? Okay, so imagine that you are drafting the defense agreement of the country. Okay, now the Indian Navy they have been conducting joint exercises with other foreign navies, and Italy's robust maritime tradition can bring advanced naval technologies in India. So both the countries they align on global forums, like FATF, the Financial Action Task Force. So this has helped them clamp down on the terror financing, which is a very critical area for India's national security. All right. Then, if we check about the environment and the climate, so how are these two countries working in this particular section? So, India and Italy, they both are pushing to fight the climate change. Italy's capital, that is Rome. You all should know about the capital of the major countries, right? They have initiated a green transportation system. And India, meanwhile, we have this India's, national solar mission also, which is aiming to install 100 gigawatt of solar power. To such kind of alliances they will funnel investment into sustainable technology, and definitely jointly they are into both are into International Solar Alliance, CDRI, and the Global Biofuel Alliance. These are popular names, they should be on our fingertips. So these things are crucial because working on environment is important. We have to understand the rising sea levels also. Then people to people ties, this is where the concept of soft diplomacy comes into picture. Okay, so there are thousands of Indians in cities like Milan and Rome. You know about the Milan, you know about Rome, you know about Venice, right? So there are cultural exchanges which are very, very vibrant. Think about Indian festivals that are being celebrated in the Italian squares. Plus, there are many Indian students who pursue fashion design or engineering in Italy. This kind of new agreement, they have signed a migration and mobility agreement in the year 2023. So which makes it easier for them to gain the valuable work experience abroad before they return to India, and it will boom the job market also. Now, other than this, we are working on Blue on the Space Economy conference, which took place. Okay, so you have to think about the synergy in maritime-based industries also. The blue economy isn't just about fishing. This is about marine biotech. This is about deep sea mining and sustainable shipping. Now, Italy's expertise in ship design, it will pair well with India's coastline, which is around 7,500 kilometers. The two countries will be focusing on merging the available resources. If we boost export, it will boost tourism for both the countries. But even after all these things, what we could observe is that there are challenges in both the countries. They both face all these challenges. China's dependence is still there, though Italy has uh, stepped out of BRI, but they still rely on China for many imports. The trade, as we talked about, 14.5, it is close to $15 billion. It is very, very less when it compares to countries like China. There they are trading around $80 billion like this. Then there are trust issues, about this Enrica Lexi case, the ship case in which the fishermen were killed. So this case is still not very resolved on a very trust and faith basis. And the Augusta Westland scam happened. So they are the impressions which have the old governments and the previous government of Italy, the previous government of India, in their tenure, all this happened. So it's not about political, it's more about the diplomatic ways, how we can channel our path in future. Because of these things, the trust issues come again and again. Then Italy's military also sells their equipment to Pakistan. They're selling helicopters, howitzers, which is a concern for India, because at one side Italy is partnering with India, on the other side they are supplying arms to and weapons to the enemy nations of India. So what can we do further? What would be our way forward in this thing? How can we move ahead? What can we do to figure out something that is best? So number one is, like, when you are in the corridors of power now, ensure that effective implementation is the real challenge. You have to figure out monitoring committees, you have to figure out timeline tracking, you have to work on the proper budgeting. All these things will play their role. So this is how the governments, they will maintain the momentum in bilateral agreements. Then close alignment of India's Actist policy. So the Indo-Pacific region is the arena for future geopolitical competition. Italy's involvement will provide the new shipping routes and help in collaborative naval drills also. So this thing is going to shape a multipolar world order that will benefit India. Then we have this, CBAM. So the carbon border adjustment mechanism. This is a European strategy, how they can reduce the carbon intensive import. So India can adopt with greener exports. We can figure out ways to work under this adjustment mechanism also. And if you are thinking about becoming a officer who will be making good policies for India, then you might involve balancing India's manufacturing sector with the environmental commitments. Then leveraging the multilateral platforms. So we have to do some collaboration in the forums that will accelerate solutions. Okay, like G20, they can push for universal framework against the terror financing. Then G7, it will help set the global green goals. Then the synergy is endless, and then working with other nations of the European country, they will bring more trust in these two countries also. Then deepening the culture and the people to people ties. Then again the soft diplomacy comes. Italy's population is also aging just like Japan. This is a fact you must remember. Now, this becomes an opportunity for Indian talents to fill the skill gap there. So, imagine a vibrant cultural exchange, celebrating Diwali in Rome, or some Italian food festival happening in New Delhi. These are the initiatives that strengthen the diplomacy at the grassroots levels. Okay. So, I believe that's it for this topic. And we have explored the crucial India-Italy relationship in this all description, from their ancient trading routes to space collaborations. So keep these points at your fingertips when you are preparing for this exam, and just a reminder, keep following the video, because as we move ahead, I'll be bringing more information, more facts, and more interesting explanations for you. Okay, so just sit and observe these explanations. They will help you understand better. They will help you think like an officer. So when you think like an officer, you start to behave like an officer, and you get what you are. You get what you deserve, not what you desire, and you deserve what you are. So start thinking like an officer. Start treating every topic like you are the IAS officer. How are you going to handle the situation? That's when your thought pattern will change. That's when the burden and the expanded syllabus will become, the cakewalk for you. Okay. Our another topic is 2.6, where we will be talking about the India and Spain relationships. Okay. So today we'll explore why Spain's president visiting India is a big deal. Okay, and I will ask you to think like an Indian foreign service officer. Okay, and you have been given the task that you have to host all the high level delegations who are coming to India. So understand why the leaders they visit your country. Why do they bring? What do they bring along with them? This is very very crucial. So India and Spain they have been strengthening their relationship over the years, and this latest visit it shows us how the two countries they can boost trade, defense, culture ties. Okay, under the Indian constitution, the foreign affairs and the diplomatic relations they are a subject of the union government, and this comes under the seventh schedule, right? The list one. That means the central government is at the wheel steering these global partnerships. Okay, we'll try to understand what were the key outcomes and how we can take it further. So this part is super exciting, the defense manufacturing. So the aircraft production right here in India. Okay, now think of C-295. This is an advanced military transport plane that will help in the troop movement, in the disaster relief, and many many more. So by August 2025, okay, 16 of these will roll out first, and 40 more will be made at home. Now, if you are someone who is an IPS officer, you are in charge of the internal security, and we have the state of the art transport aircraft that will dramatically improve the disaster rescue operations, and also provide logistical support. So how will you figure out ways to establish this relationship with the country? Also, you know uh, the Airbus they have chose Vadodara. You all know about the Airbus company, right? Airbus they have chose Vadodara for their robust infrastructure and because of the availability of skilled manpower in Vadodara. So this will not only cement India's role as a manufacturing hub, but also open doors for the job creation and the technology transfers. Then the investment facilitation. So the Department of Promotion of Industries and the International Trade, that is the DPIIT, they will set up a fast track mechanism with Spain's Directorate General of International Trade. Okay, that is their trade authority. Now, what does this mean? This means this process will help us reduce the red tapeism, and this will allow the Spanish companies to invest quickly in India. Okay, so consider this as a priority lane for the foreign investors. That's what India is doing with Spain. So this will foster confidence in the potential investors who are looking to set up factories or maybe research and development units in India, or they want to collaborate on the technology projects in India. By when we create such task force fast track lanes, India often climbs higher in the ease of doing business rankings. So this concept will also improve the EODB in India, okay, which is an aspect that all the examiners love to ask about. Then the consular expansion. Now understand the brand new consulate in Barcelona. So a consulate, what does a consulate do? Okay, so a consulate helps the citizen with visas, travel documents, and also improve the cultural ties. So they are opening one in Bangalore. The Spain is opening one consulate in Bangalore. How will this help? This will encourage more Spanish businesses, tourists, and the students to explore the India's Silicon Valley. Now, this local presence will bridge gaps, whether it is forging business ties or it is simply helping the stranded travelers. Also, Barcelona already attract millions of tourists each year, and having an Indian consulate means we will have swift assistance for any Indian who is traveling or studying in that region. Then we move toward the cultural cooperation. So, culture, tourism, and artificial intelligence. They talk about a power trio, the three things, all right? And now imagine you are the IAS officer and you are trying to boost the tourism and the cultural awareness. The government has given you a task that in this area, boost the tourism and cultural awareness, come up with a strategy. You will be thrilled that the 2000 2026 India-Spain Year of Culture. This is set to expand tourism both ways. So people-to-people contact is super important because it will help break stereotypes and it will improve the global learning also. Did you know that, Valladolid is one of the oldest university cities in Spain? Have you ever heard this name? So what happens is, key by setting up ICCR chairs in this place, India will showcase yoga, Hindi, classical art on a global stage. So while also learning from Spain's rich heritage, this will be a cultural exchange happening there. Now we'll try to understand the India and Spain bilateral relationships in a bit more expanded manner. So we'll start with how the diplomatic relationships, all these things are happening. Okay, and okay, fine. So this relationship is older than our grandparents' childhoods also. All these things it began in the year 1956, and fast forward to the year 2017, the Association for Peace, Growth and Innovation (APCI) made it official that India and Spain are not just acquaintances, but they are strong partners. So acquaintances are the people you just know. You do not have a relation or bond with them. You just know them. Okay. Like sometimes you say, "Oh, I do not have a relationship. He's not a friend, but he's an acquaintance. I just know him," right? Like that. So, if you are given a task, like you are the Indian Police Service officer, and you have to work on the International Crime Patrol. Okay. So you would want to know that Spain is big when it comes to the European Union. Okay. And their support can be crucial when you have to tackle the global terrorism, cybercrime, or anything else. Okay. So you also have to remember that Spain's strategic position in the southern Europe, okay, it will give India a gateway to further European Union markets, okay, and their other collaborations also. So think of this diplomatic ways as a channel to expand the collaboration in terms of global terrorism. Then the multiple cooperation. So you have to get support from Spain for critical membership like the MTCR, okay, the Missile Technology Control Regime. So MTCR's goal is to prevent the spread of missile and drone technology that can carry large payloads. And India's membership matters because it will help us access sensitive technology legally, while it will also showcase India as a reasonable power. Okay, so I'll give you some extra fact. India joined MTCR in the year 2016, which has paved the way for high-end collaboration in the defense manufacturing with countries, like Spain is there, and then we have France is also there. Okay, so each endorsement from a nation like Spain will further strengthen India's global standing. Then we have trade and economic relation. So let us talk about numbers. A $9.9 billion US dollar trade in the year 2023. Now become the IFS officer now. Change your role. Okay. Picture yourself as a future Indian Foreign Service officer and you are negotiating the trade policy of country. Okay. How would you see the Spanish companies, like Zara and, um, Iberdrola, they have been expanding in India, right? You know about all these companies. So while Indian IT giants, they are setting up shops in Madrid. So this cultural exchange is happening in the trade and economic section. So Spain is ranked as 16th when it comes to the investment ranking for the FDIs. Now there's plenty of room for this rank to improve. They can go from 16th to 6th. How? When we increase the trade. How will you help the two countries increase the trade? And you know everything about the two countries, right? So meanwhile, the Indian giants in IT and pharma, they have found a welcoming home in the Spanish city. And we need to know, there's one more lesser known fact that India's pharmaceutical exports to the Europe, they have grown up steadily, specifically after the COVID-19 that happened. Okay. And Spain has a very advanced R&D capability, so they can offer us huge collaborations in these sectors. Now I wanted to bring your attention to this particular section, that how will you be handling the defense portfolios. So the two countries, they will be co-developing the naval ships, and this is going to be a game changer for the maritime security. So India's location, along with the other major shipping routes, it calls for a robust maritime defense. And by collaborating with Spain, Spain is famous for its naval design and other expertise. So we can strengthen our indigenous shipbuilding capabilities also. So Here's something I want to tell you which is not mentioned there. Spain's Navantia, Navantia. So Spain's Navantia, this is known worldwide for the frigates and the submarines. So it is potentially leading to advanced tech sharing. And then we have joint naval exercises like the PASEX. It will help in building interoperability between the two countries. So if an Indian destroyer will meet a Spanish frigate at the sea, both the crews will know how to communicate effectively when the two countries will be uh, aligning for the war with some other third country like this. And last but not the least, the cultural exchange. Okay, now it's time to bring in the Desi vibes. Over 75,000 Indians, they reside in Spain. That means we have a flourishing community. They are been celebrating Diwali there. Okay, so ICCR's presence ensure that yoga, then the Bharatnatyam, and even the Bollywood dance classes, they are accessible to the Spanish citizens also. So we have the cultural ties which go beyond entertainment, which lead to direct investment, which lead to tourism and some stronger diplomatic bonds. I would like to bring another fun fact here. So, there is a dance form called flamenco. Have you ever heard about this name, flamenco? This is a dance style from Spain. It's a passionate dance form, and this had a fusion performance with the Indian classical dances like Kathak. So imagine this thing, symbolizing how the cultures they can blend and they can create new art forms. So when you are the administrative service officer and you have to host a cultural festival that will highlight both flamenco and the Bharatnatyam, it would be a hit. That's how you will be showing the cultural exchange between the two countries. That's how you become a good officer, an efficient officer, right? So we have covered everything from why the Spain's president visited and how both the countries are working in defense, trade, culture. And as a future civil service aspirant, it's very crucial to grasp these global links. Okay. So keep imagining yourself as a forefront who will be shaping India's future. All right.